Hey everyone, so coincidentally, as I was recording for this video, a fan messaged me letting me know that a friend of his is missing. He was last seen leaving for a job on Craigslist in his mother's 2006 black Ford 500, and I know it's a long shot, but I want to help in any way I can. If you live anywhere near Saudi Daisy, Tennessee, sorry if I butchered the name of that, and you have seen this man, please contact the police department. I will leave links in the description with more information on the case, but he's been missing for about a month now. Now, let's get to the stories. Number 1. This happened about a year ago now. I am a college student and I was basically forced to move out on my own, which I didn't mind, but that meant finding a new roommate, which can be a daunting and scary experience. I've had a few weird encounters, but I think this one takes the cake. I posted on Craigslist looking for a bedroom in a shared house or apartment for $300 or less, and on my ad I had mentioned, please no phone calls, only texts or email, because I find being on the phone with someone I haven't had a chance to size up a really uncomfortable situation. I'm just an awkward person, I guess. Anyway, I get a call from a dude who clearly didn't read the no calls part, which I mentioned because this type of phone call was exactly the reason I don't like to talk to strangers on the phone. At first, he was just pleasant and normal, told me he had a room available and relevant information like that. We started to talk about when and where we'd meet up, and he started going on tangents about random stuff. I'm a combination of too interested in deep conversation and too awkward to end the call when it started to get weird. So this call went on for about 2 hours and we talked about the meaning of life and all kinds of weird shit. Honestly, this should have been the red flag and I shouldn't have met him, and of course I also should have grown a pair and told him I needed to leave. So he wants me to meet him at his place and show me the room. I've since learned that you should really insist on meeting in public first. I got to his neighborhood and it was run down on a level that made the ghetto I grew up in look nice. Saggy front porches, hot cracked concrete, sad people with old beat up Lincolns. You get the picture. His house blended right in. The yard was seriously overgrown and the front door didn't even work. So I went around the back, and just looking at the guy standing in the doorway and seeing the kitchen behind him was enough to make me realize I really just wanted to leave. There's no way in hell. The guy in the doorway was a man with a sort of clown-style afro. He was leaning on a cane on his right side. His eyes looked crazy and the house smelled musty from 10 feet away. Again, I'm a coward, so instead of trusting my gut, I go inside and I'm polite, thinking, it's okay, it'll be over in 20 minutes and I can get the fuck out. I don't know what made me think this man, who had a 2-hour conversation with me on the phone about life and philosophy, would let me get away that easily. He took me up a flight of creaky steps into a small bedroom with no door and a mattress on the floor. I thought, no way in hell would I live with a 40-something-year-old man and have no door on my bedroom, but it was a moot point because my mind was made up before I even saw the room. I wouldn't have lived there for free, let alone for $200 a month. Things got weird. He tried to hold me hostage with conversation again. I think he was lonely. He talked about how some of his family members were millionaires. He might have been delusional, the whole story seemed made up. Then he told me this story about an 18-year-old girl that has also checked out the room and tried to have sex with him or something, and told me about how his mom hated white people. He was black and I was white, and it sounded like he sympathized with her. Obviously that was super awkward and uncomfortable. Eventually I was able to find a break in conversation and plucked up the courage to make up an excuse to leave. I was never so happy to leave a place in my life. I don't know that he was necessarily a criminal or anything, but he really gave me the fucking creeps. Number 2. I live in a small village in the very north of Scotland, so large shops and resources are a far distance from me. For that reason, I usually rely on internet shopping to get what I need. I needed to buy a backpack for when I leave for university, one better than the one I already have. So, I turned to Craigslist as I normally do. As a student, I prefer to go for the cheap option. Craigslist usually provides that. After looking for a short while, I came across a really good-looking bag at only 15 pounds. I thought this was an absolute steal, so I phoned the seller. Immediately, what struck me was this guy's accent. It was obvious that he wasn't Scottish or even from the UK. He sounded Polish or something. I'm still not even sure. He said he was from Glasgow. That's at least 5 hours by car from where I live, but when I told him the area I was from, he reluctantly offered to come to my house to give me it. This all seemed strange, being that the sale was only for 15 pounds. Nonetheless, I foolishly gave him my fucking address. He said he'd drop by later on that day. Skipping forward about 7 hours to like 10 p.m. I was thinking that he wasn't going to come, but at around 10:20, there was a guy at the door. Surprised that it was so late, I looked out the window to see the front door, just to be sure. And sure enough, it was a young guy standing with a backpack in his hand. Slightly relieved that it wasn't a robber, I went to the door and opened it up. It was the guy on the phone for sure, the accent confirmed it. He said, "Hey, here it is." I smiled and took out my wallet, taking out 30 pounds because of the trouble he went to come here and the condition of the bag. He smiled and opened his arms as if he wanted a hug. Being a gay guy, I rarely turned down a hug and just assumed it was a cultural thing, so I hugged him and he left. I was still so confused that he came all this way just for 15 pounds, but I didn't find it overly strange. And boy was I wrong. At around midnight, I was finishing another episode of 24 and was ready to go to bed. From outside the house, I heard a car door shut, which was really weird for this time of the night, and in my area, the nearest house is like a quarter-mile away and I rarely see the people that even live there. I paused the TV and went over to the window to see who it was. I recognized the car as being the green sedan that the guy had, but he wasn't there. No one was. It was at that point when I heard the back gate opening. I fucking nearly shit myself. I ran quietly to the kitchen where the back door is, staying low to avoid whoever it was from seeing me from the kitchen window. I usually don't lock both doors till I go to bed, so both were still unlocked. I grabbed the keys from the counter and quickly locked the door. As I did, I see a security light turning on in the back garden. It's a motion sensor that turns it on. I looked up to see that it was him again. He had a creepy smile on his face with no teeth showing. Just a smile. I stood up and shouted, "Whoa dude, what the fuck are you doing back here?" He said nothing and just smiled, looking directly at me. I found myself just staring at him until the situation actually kicked in and I took the keys from the back door, then bolted to the front door to lock it. About halfway to the front door, I heard a window smash in the kitchen. My stomach ached at the fact that he's probably making his way into my house. I made a turn to go up the stairs towards the bathroom so I could lock myself in there. When I was in the bathroom, I heard him stumbling and broken glass falling to the floor. He was in my house. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and quickly dialed 999, told them of the situation as fast as I could, and they said they'll get the officers out to me as fast as possible. The police station was just up from my village, so I knew someone would get there generally quick. The operator asked me to stay on the phone until someone arrived. I was focused on the guy's footsteps, which would slow down and speed up every so often. He eventually walked upstairs and tried to open the bathroom door. When he realized it was locked, he said, "Ah, I know you're in there, Cameron." Hearing him say my name made my stomach churn. I screamed, "The police are coming, just back the fuck off, man." After saying that, he started to kick the door. I backed up against it with more strength than I knew I even had. Then in the distance, I heard the sirens and the blue lights reflecting from the bathroom windows. He continued to kick the door, but then I heard the car doors open outside and fast footsteps. I heard the front door open and then someone shout, "Police, drop the knife." Again, I felt sick knowing he even had a knife. It sounded as if he started running back downstairs, and then I heard a taser go off and the guy scream. And then I heard a thump. They eventually arrested him. I have pressed charges, but the fact is, he won't get any more than 7 months in jail. After that, he will be free to come right back. I am now trying to sell my house to get out of here as fast as possible. Number 3. Hi, my name is Tom and I live in the St. Louis area, and this is a horror story about something that happened to me that almost fucked up my life forever. When I was 21 years old, I broke up with my first ever serious girlfriend who I had been together with for 8 months. Needless to say, I was devastated. I fell into a deep depression and I began abusing painkillers and Xanax really heavily. I also began looking for any girl I could find to rebound with. I ended up looking on the personal section on Craigslist and I found an ad for a girl named Stephanie. I began talking to her and we arranged to meet up. To make a long story short, we had sex and decided to make it a regular thing. She was an older lady, about 35 and a bigger girl, but she had her own apartment and enough money to keep me loaded on as much drugs and alcohol as I wanted. To be honest, I kind of used this lady and used her as a sugar mama for lack of better word, I guess. After a while, she grew really attached to me and started to want a more serious relationship. Eventually, she started dropping hints about wanting to get married. She said she wanted to do this to help me out so she could get me on her insurance so I can get help for my drug and alcohol problem, which I refused to consider. One day, we got into a big argument and she told the police that I had been abusing her and got a temporary restraining order on me. A week after she did this, she called me crying her eyes out, saying, "Please forgive me, I love you," and all this other stuff, and said she wanted to come pick me up to buy some dope and alcohol and get me something to eat, and being the addict I am, I of course accepted. From the moment she picked me up, I noticed that she was acting kind of odd. She was usually really talkative and was always on my ass wanting to talk to me about this and that, but on this day she was oddly quiet. When we got back to her apartment, after I walked in, she immediately pushed me on the couch and, to make another long story short, we had sex again. But something odd happened. She was angry that I had used protection. I had been getting bad vibes off of her the whole night, so after this happened, I immediately asked her for a ride back home, which she quickly agreed to do. After I got dropped off at the house, I went inside and I sat down with my sister and watched some SpongeBob with her. About 10 minutes after I was home, I got a call on the phone. I picked up the phone and to my surprise, a lady on the other end said, "This is the St. Louis County Police Department. We're going to need you to come outside to talk to you." I ran downstairs and hid my weed and my pills and then walked outside to figure out what the hell was going on. When I walked outside, there were about 7 different cops on my porch and they were all pointing tasers and guns at me. One of them hit me in the back of my leg with a nightstick and put me on the ground and I was handcuffed. The cops then talked to my mom and got permission to go inside of the house, where they took a drug dog and began doing a thorough search of my room and my basement area. None of the cops on the scene would tell me what was going on whenever I would ask a question like why they were doing this. They just told me I would have to talk to the detective at the station. When I got to the police station, I had a bombshell dropped on me. Apparently this lady had accused me of kidnapping her and raping her. She told the police that she had come by my house to return some of my stuff because we had just broken up, that I had held a knife to her throat and forced my way into her vehicle, and then took her back to my apartment where I raped her repeatedly. Thankfully, I had remembered that we made a couple stops on the way to her apartment. She had gone inside of a gas station to get a couple packs of cigarettes with me, so there was no way that I could have kidnapped her. Unfortunately, the police still swabbed my dick for DNA and they also took my clothes for evidence, and I was forced to spend the night in the St. Louis County Jail wearing nothing but hospital scrubs. I was released the next morning, but my ordeal was far from over. This lady began constantly stalking me. She would call me every night at odd times from blocked numbers and either crying into the phone or just to beg to talk to me. I also began seeing her vehicle quite a lot in the neighborhood, even though she lives nowhere close to me. I called the police about this a couple times, but they didn't really seem to care. They just told me I would have to get a restraining order on her in order to make her stop. I wanted nothing to do with the court system though, because I have a criminal record and I just decided to ignore her and hope that the problem would go away. After a couple months, she finally did stop bothering me as much. However, to this day, sometimes I get calls at 2 or 3 in the morning from blocked numbers. And of course, every new girlfriend I get, she messages them on Facebook and tells them about how I raped her. Moral of this story, be careful who you meet online, whether you're a guy or a girl. All it takes is one crazy person to completely ruin your life.